If you've already seen my video on how to take an ear cast, today I'm going to show you how I make most elf ears. Now obviously you can do all kinds of different shapes, but today I'm going to show you probably the most common thing most people want ear casts for, and that's to make elf ears. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of sculpting clay, and this is the remoldable clay that children use, so you can use it again and again, right behind the ear, and then put a second shape, which is going to be in a V shape, over on the other side. Then I'm going to start blending out the edges at the very bottom, and you can use your fingers for this. After that, I'm going to use a sculpting tool, and the reason I like this sculpting tool is that on one side I can use that to scrape away at the clay, and the other side I can use to slowly carve away the Play-Doh. But you can use whatever you want, it really doesn't matter. You could even use a pencil, which is something that I have done in the past when I didn't have a sculpting tool to use. And what you're going to do is you're going to slowly chip away that clay, make sure that there's enough space behind the ear, this is quite important. And then once I've smoothed everything down more or less, what I'm going to start doing is create a little dip at the very edge of the ear. And at first you're just going to make it quite deep, you're not going to make it particularly rounded, so if the edge is quite squarish, that's okay, you just want to get the shape. And then after you've got that basic shape, that's when you want to round the edges, because no one's ear is going to have a very sharp angle. Even if it's elf ears, the edges are going to be slightly rounded, it looks a lot more organic. So you can use your fingers or a tool for that. Also, something else you could use is you could use a makeup brush with very stiff bristles. This will also help, but the problem is it will leave lines in the clay, so after that you'd have to blend it out. You can also use sculpting tools that they use for modelling as well. Then I'm going to be using some latex. The latex that I have is quite thick, so if you have a thinner latex you'd probably have to apply between 4 to 5 coats. As it is, this latex, it's so thick I only really had to apply about 2 or 3. And then after I've applied those coats I'm going to let it dry. After that you want to remove it. Now you're going to need a powder. You can use something like talcum powder, or you can use an HD powder, or even an old face powder that you don't use anymore. And you need to do this, otherwise the latex is going to stick to itself once you peel it off. So I'm going to powder the outside, and then while I'm peeling it off I'm going to also powder the underneath so that it doesn't stick together. As for the Play-Doh, I'm just going to take this off. Now normally what I've found is when I do this and I use it for making little prosthetics like this, it does tend to dry out like crazy. So normally what I do is I add a little bit of oil or even moisturizer to it so that I can use it again. The final thing I'm going to do to the ears is just clean off some of the clay which will have stuck to the edges, and for this you can just use an old makeup remover. You can even use soap, it's not really going to damage the latex. Now sometimes what I do also do is I trim the edges. I don't always do this, but if I do, the easiest way to do this is to turn it inside out, because it does tend to curl in on itself, so if you put it inside out it's much easier to get a clean line and cut those edges very neatly. And then that's it, now you have some easy to make custom elf ears.